Good afternoon and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriations, and Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Friday, May 13, 2022, and the time now is 3:30. Notice for this budget hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Thursday, May 5th, followed by May 6th. And second notice was on May 10th. The committee will now hear Bill 276-36 COR from the Committee on Rules by the request of the I Maga'hågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriation for the operation of the executive branch of the Government of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023, making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions relative to the Department of Youth Affairs. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me this afternoon. We have the Oversight Chair of DYA, which is Senator Amanda Shelton, and we also have Senator Tello that has joined us this afternoon. Those testifying on Bill 276-36 COR relative to the Department of Youth Affairs are invited to the panel. We have Ms. Brennan, the Director, and she will introduce your staff when the time comes, all right? Mind the general rules for this public hearing. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes, but you'll have more than 5 minutes to do your presentation, okay? Those testifying be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda, which is the budget of Department of Youth Affairs. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. If anyone in my colleagues or the panel feel there's personal inference, please raise your hand and please advise so we can stop, pause, and have the individual be excused. All right? Any violations of the general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing. Public forum and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony, but no, they'll be restricted from any continued oral testimony and will be removed from the room. All right? When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Other questions may be submitted to the committee for submission. So if any of my colleagues have any questions and it couldn't be answered, they will submit it to me, and then I will make sure that the panel gets the questions, and we would ask you to promptly give a response. All right? And please state your name and your title for the record. At this point, I'd ask the Sergeant at Arms to please have the panel please rise, and you'll be sworn in so that all your testimony are in order.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Sergeant at Arms. I would ask now Mrs. Brennan, if you can please introduce your staff that are present with you. We're also joined by Senator Joanne Brown. Please introduce all your staff, and when the staff first time you answer a question, just state your name, and then after that you won't have to keep reintroducing yourself. All right, Ms. Brennan, and I know you have a good amount of slides. You may begin after you introduce everybody. Thank you.
Hafa and good afternoon, Senator San Agustin and members of the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing. I'm privileged to present the Department of Youth Affairs Fiscal Year 2023 Budget Requests. My name is Melanie Brennan, and I'm the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs, and my team includes, to my right, Youth Development Administrator Corinne Bondicho. To my left is the Deputy Director, Michael Weekly, and then David Afeisen, our Superintendent, and Ms. Danielle Camacho, a Youth Service Worker 2, who wears many hats. Good afternoon, Senator Tello Taitagui, Senator Joanne Brown, and our Oversight Chair, Senator Shelton. Thank you so much. If we could put up our slide presentation, the next slide will show our mission. As described in Public Law 14-110, DYA's purpose is to improve the quality of life on Guam for everyone by the development of programs and services that promote positive youth development, decrease juvenile delinquency and status offenses, strengthen the family unit, protect the public, and ensure that offenders are held accountable for their actions and are provided with appropriate treatment and support. Next slide. So this is where we're at today. We have a considerable amount of highlights despite the pandemic. Most notable is our continued collaboration with child welfare. Since the Executive Order 2021-02 in January of last year, half of our social work staff has been at Child Protective Services, and we've addressed the backlog of over 900 cases as well as all incoming new referrals, and that equates to more than 1,500 new referrals. Additionally, we have expanded and improved access to mental health care within our youth correctional facility by collaborating with GIBWIC on community mental health centers. They received a grant, and they will actually be on site at the youth correctional facility in the summer of 2022. Additionally, we have satisfied prior decade-long obligation called the 4043. This was first filed years ago with Customs, and they resolved their situation. However, DYA's was not resolved until the end of last year. Additionally, we have no prior year personnel service obligations. We are up to date. Due to several federal funding opportunities that arose because of the pandemic, we were able to establish virtual learning centers, computer labs in each of our dormitories, as well as our youth resource centers in Agate, Dededo, and Manilao. Additionally, through federal funding, we were able to obtain DYA's first ever automated case management system. This will allow us to leverage federal funds with up-to-date real-time data. And we are happy to inform you that the system went live April 25th. Am I correct, Danielle? Okay, so April 25th. Super excited about that. We also are currently using technical assistance through the RFK, the Robert F. Kennedy Community Alliance on Juvenile Justice Reform. I know that Senator Shelton, you met with the team that was out here. They're doing a comprehensive evaluation and will make recommendations on strengthening our services to youth and families on Guam. Additionally, we were able to launch, in coordination with the Guam Department of Education, again with federal funds, the first ever Summer Youth Employment and Internship Program. And this was last year, and we intend to do it again, but we are doing it with the Governor's Office this year, and we are going to employ over 650 youth this summer. Additionally, we just got through with Youth Month. We continue to conduct the oratorical contest, Island Leadership Day, Jump for Justice, and this is in partnership with other government agencies and the District Court of Guam. We continue to capitalize on webinars, virtual training opportunities for professional development, such as neurobiology of trauma, juvenile reentry, what works in delinquency prevention, and credible messaging and juvenile justice reform. We did have one youth service worker to train as a train-the-trainer in de-escalation or verbal judo. We instituted the correctional institution pay and the child welfare differential pay at 25%. We continue to do drug testing of all our DYA test-designated positions, and we capitalized on CARE Act funds, and we recently received a 15-passenger van, and it was also on April 25th. We are obtaining a new camera surveillance system, and the bid announcement will be announced on May 16th, next week. Just to let you know, the 4043 did cost $89,000. Those were our highlights. Our FY23 DYA budget request is reflected in this next slide. That is not, okay, right. That is the wrong one. Maybe you can just cut it off.
If you want, you can have your staff get with the folks in the back and adjust which slide you want on.
I apologize, that is not the correct, that was basically our notes slide.
I think your next slide should be
You can-
overcoming challenges? or-
Yeah, you can probably shut that
There you go.
off.
Is this the one you want?
No, it's the DYA budget request slide.
The DYA budget?
Yeah. Next, please.
That one?
Next,
Next one?
next, next. It's the wrong one. Next, next. Perhaps we can end that, and I could provide another. Or we could stop that, and we could just use the presentation sheets in front of you.
I think the next slide would have been your DYA budget. So why don't you go ahead, tech folks, go, put it back on and let's see.
Isn't that it?
Right there, is that the one you're talking about, the DYA budget?
He has the correct one, sir. Sorry.
Oh, okay. We'll just give it a...
I apologize.
We'll hold off a few minutes. Let's get this up to date. So, why don't we just do a quick recess for a couple minutes while they update, all right? So let them know we're gonna recess and then they'll upload it, all right? Quick recess, thank you. All right, the committee is back in order, and Ms. Brennan, please, let's get that slide back on and let's continue on. Is that the correct one now?
That is the correct one, thank you.
All right.
So as you can tell in this slide, it depicts that our 2023 needs that we submitted were for $8.5 million. However, the budget ceiling was at 8.1 with a shortfall of $476,651. No, I'm sorry, $476,651. Despite the fact that our ceiling was short, this shortfall is approved to be covered by the Governor's Discretionary American Rescue Plan funds, which the Department of Youth Affairs received $2.7 million, of which was loaded in April of this year. Next slide, please. So this just this slide just indicates the same thing, but with the variance by cost category, with needs and ceiling level. Same thing, on the bottom right, you see that total shortfall of $476,000, again, to be covered by ARP funding. Next slide. So the obvious increase came from personnel, 18% LEO pay increase in the correctional institution and child welfare differential pay impacted DYA's budget by $1.8 million. Next slide, please. Again, our fund sources by year since 2020 and the increased levels are seen in this slide. Next slide, please. Okay, capital improvement projects and federal grants. The Department of Youth Affairs receives Title II formula grants in the amount of no more than $75,000 per year. And currently we have 2018, 2019, and 2020 grant monies still are ongoing with pending supplemental budget approvals. In addition to these 3 formula grants, we did receive the Prison Rape Elimination Act PREA TIPS grants. This is for targeted implementation, and although we received it during the pandemic, it was finally approved. The final project plan was approved on April 27th of this year, and a no-cost extension is in place. And again, this particular grant will assist us reach PREA compliance, which makes DYA a sexually safer environment for the residents. Additionally, we have several outstanding capital improvement projects, one for the administrative building, and this is still in progress, and the only thing left is for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to give us authorization to proceed. And this is also the same with our fire alarm system, and also an ongoing facility upgrade for our fence line, our perimeter fence line, and our surveillance system, along with magnetic door locks, and this is all pending USACE review. Again, we did receive CARES Act funding, and I see a balance of $15,313. This needs to be expended by September of this year. We did also receive education stabilization funds, of which we were able to stand up the virtual learning centers, able to also provide for a DYA case management system. This is ongoing, and I believe we've encumbered most of the monies. There is a balance of $5,517 left in that particular stabilization fund. We also were approved for FEMA public assistance and the pandemic supplies for overtime during the pandemic for us. There is a remaining balance of $21,231 for this particular grant. And of course, I had explained the American Rescue Funds through the Governor's Office. $2.7 million was loaded in April of 2022. We do anticipate that will assist us with any shortfalls. Next slide, please. This is our full-time employee 4-year trend. You can see that it pretty much has stayed consistent with 87 employees. The chart tracks our employee levels, but I think that most of you want to know, next slide, about our outstanding recruitments, our vacant positions. We have recruited of the 14 positions, 7 were recruited, and you can see that we recruited a community program aide in October of last year, as well as a cook 1, and we were able to hire a maintenance leader. So now we have 2 maintenance positions for all of our facilities. And we also were able to promote 3 youth service worker 2s in February of this year and hire an additional social worker 1. She joined our team in February of this year. So 7 recruitments are in progress, and they are all listed on the side, on the right side of this slide. Those GG1s are currently in progress. Next slide, please. So where are we today? So currently, with regard to our local account fund summary, second quarter, it's pretty much tracking. We've expended about 50%, 49% to be exact. Sorry. This does not include the Runaway and Homeless Youth and Victims of Abuse Fund. Next slide, please. Okay, overcoming challenges. Okay, so the pandemic is still ongoing. COVID impacts still impact our personnel and our youth residents. We do run a congregate facility, and therefore we still have to have masks on and social distancing. We have to up our hygiene and our cleaning of the dorm rooms. We are anticipating safely opening our resource centers right after school this year. June 1st is our target date. And another challenge is, and I see this both in the child welfare system and the juvenile justice system, is addressing the racial and ethnic disparities. Additionally, we have noticed, and we know that it's a challenge, but we also see it as an opportunity to work better with crossover youth or dual status youth, youth with mental illness, and youth homelessness. It has been a huge collaboration with Child Protective Services. We know we can do better by the children and families we serve by doing better jobs at prevention and intervention in the child welfare system. We continue to work with engagement of both youth, family, and the community. We know that no single government organization can be responsible to solve the child welfare issues or the juvenile justice issues, so we need to leverage our community partners and our government partners. Recruitment and retention is always an issue with insufficient lists of eligibles, especially in the social work field. It used to be an issue with our youth service workers, but I'm telling you the correctional pay has helped, and we are seeing less absenteeism and just happier, overall better morale with our workers. Again, we want to leverage all our federal funding for programs within YCF and at the centers. Part of our ARP funds, I know that you'll ask this, is are we going to hire any employees? And yes, we are. We are looking at hiring a program coordinator and a social services supervisor 1. We've been given a spot in Toto Gardens to expand our youth centers, and so we know that there's a finite date for when we can hire, and I know that what we want the program coordinator to is to pursue federal funding to help increase our evidence-based programs, and additionally assist as we transition back from CPS to DYA and back into the centers. We also have the challenges are pretty obvious with our Department of Interior capital improvement projects. They have been stymied by COVID, and we are waiting now. We've gotten over all of the local hurdles, and now we await the Army Corps of Engineers authorization to proceed. Next slide. Looking ahead, so we are excited to have another summer youth employment program. Again, we will stand that up and we will offer it to 650 kids, hopefully more. We're forging new collaborative partnerships with Total Guam Foundation. They're coming in and doing character building with our youth. We also have formed an alliance with the RFK Juvenile Justice Reform, our technical assistance partners, and we're also enhancing programming at the Youth Correctional Facility. We're also looking at alternatives to detention. Also, we did submit an application for OJJDP's Second Chance Act for Youth Offender Reentry. Unfortunately, we weren't able to secure that. We do hope to reapply. We are achieving PREA compliance with the 40 standards. We're not there yet, but we continue to work hard, and hopefully we will be fully compliant by 2023. Additionally, we're looking for credible messengers, mentors, and other delinquency prevention programs. We do have Title II funding that can pay for those particular programs. Jobs for American Graduates is another avenue that we can look at. It's worked nationally. We hope to speak more with our national counterparts for the JAG. Additionally, and I said this, the PREA compliance and the PREA reallocation grant has assisted us with, I believe, 2 additional vans. I believe that's the end of our presentation. We stand ready to answer any questions. Is that right?
All right, thank you, Ms. Brennan. Just want to reemphasize that you've identified, you may have a shortfall, but you have ARP funds to cover it.
That's
23.
correct.
Okay, then I have nothing else. Oversight Chair, you be last. Okay, Senator Tello, you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues, as well as to the staff of DYA, Director. Thank you so much for doing a great job over at DYA, and I really appreciate all the hard work, and please resonate that to your staff as well for us, that greatly appreciate their work. So welcome aboard too to Michael Weekly, being the deputy. I'm sure that your director is glad to have that additional help based on what you presented today on all the programs that are coming in. When you were talking earlier about the shortfall and we were talking about the ARP funding, you received 2.735104. This shortfall, this 476, I believe you did indicate what it's going to be spent on, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And one of them showed salaries. And the amount was $308,000 for salaries, and then overtime was $222. Is that correct? I'm just looking at your, I'm looking at your chart right now.
Which slide is that?
You don't have a number on it, but it says variance cost by category. Okay.
That's correct.
You have it there?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, and of course, this is the $476,000 that you were talking about that ARP funding is going to cover, and it's showing 308,291 for salaries, and then overtime at 222, and then benefits at 160,700. Now, this funding, the ARP funding, is this the governor's discretionary ARP funding that you received, or is it a separate grant?
No, that is correct. It's the ARP that was given from
To the governor?
Yes.
Okay. And so I guess there's clearance to use this money for salaries?
Yes, that's correct.
It's been approved.
Right.
Are any of these salaries something that you're going to have to sustain for next year?
So this is actually the variance for FY2023. This is our so-called shortfalls.
I see.
So this would be the amount.
So basically, your amount that you're requesting is compared to what FY22 is compared to now 2023. You're requesting, and I'm not going to include the special funds
Right.
at all. I'm just going to go through the general fund. So there's a difference of $1.8 million, 1.876216 additional funding that you're requesting, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so of that funding amount, the additional amount, then this salary for 2023 of 308,219, can you kind of explain who is being paid with this ARP funding and why is it so different from the regular general fund paying for the personnel?
So the youth correctional officers received a law enforcement pay increase of 18%. Okay, and they were paid, they started to receive payment at the end of January of this year. Additionally, the youth corrections also received a 25% last year, 25% correctional differential pay. So when they show up for work, they receive pay for being inside the facility, and they receive that extra 25%. So their slide, I believe slide 6, indicates the differential pay's impact on our budget, which accounts for the 1.8 million increase in our budget.
I'm sorry, what page you're telling on is?
The slide is slide 6. Is that slide
Okay, and
6?
what is the name of that? Can you just show me, Michael, because I know you're looking at it. Can you see me? Okay, got it. It's the next slide. It's the next slide over. So this is slide 6. So the one that we're looking at is slide 5. Okay. So here you're showing the 18% increase, correctional, and you're using ARP funding to cover these 18% impact. You're only covering some of it,
Some.
in other words. So in 2024, you're going to need funding to cover the remaining because it's obvious this is, This is not the full amount, or is it this is a full amount every year that's going to move from 2023 to 24 and so on?
Well-
This is a full amount, 1.2,072,954? You're going to need that every single year?
It does reflect, it will also reflect on the benefits, so it will be considered like organic growth.
Organic growth, okay. But currently, right now, this 1.2 is directly from the general fund, and then you need an additional 300,000, or is that incorporated in this 1.2 that you're, the next slide on page 6?
Slide 5.
No problem.
So if you look at the bottom right corner, that is actually our FY 2023 shortfalls if we are provided with the ceiling that we are here to request. The shortfall would amount to 476,000, but it already incorporates the 25% because that was authorized in our FY22 budget, and so we're asking for the 18% for the law enforcement increase, which was through executive order in January of this year, as well as the child welfare differential, which is also this year.
It's probably easier to explain, but the 18% impact from the salary benefits,
That's the overall impact that's shown on slide 6.
which is $918,000 just for DYA alone for their 18% salary and benefits for the increase, correct?
That's correct.
So if there wasn't an 18% increase, then we would not be dealing with the $918,000, right? I mean, we saw DOC, and their impact. There's a hum that's coming in. We saw the impact with DOC, which was in the millions. So yours is only, well, not only, but it's almost $1 million. It's about 900.
It is quite an impact. We're not as large as the other law enforcement agencies, but I think it's important to note that on the law enforcement ladder, corrections was normally the least paid of all law enforcement officers. I think it's high time. I had been asking for a competitive wage act. We had urged, but then COVID happened, and so we believe that our officers deserve this. And the work that they do has been quite difficult, especially because of the pandemic. ARP allows it to be utilized in this way, and I would hope that that you guys would approve of our budget without hitting.
I totally agree with you. I remember the time when we had all the officers here in this, this public hearing, and we were talking about that and that situation. And there's no doubt about it. They work just as hard as any other public, safety officer. And especially dealing with our vulnerable, this is something, of course, I truly believe in, but it's something that has to be sustainable. This funding needs to be sustainable, so it's finding this money is going to be, and that's what your 1.876216 increases. That's the difference between 2022 and now 2023. So, and I'm sure there's other things. There's almost another $900,000 in here that you're requesting above what you had from FY22. So a lot of this has to do with the increase.
That's correct. If you look at our staffing, it hasn't exceeded. We're not asking for more staff.
Okay. The ESF funding, you received $220,500 on the ESF, correct?
I believe that's the correct amount. Let me just double check.
What obligations does the agency have to the programs that have been awarded this fund? Is any of this money, by the way, supporting somebody's paycheck?
No, the Education Stabilization Fund went to, it's clear on, gosh, I want to say it's slide 8, but I know that there was an error that I'm looking at. Slide 8 indicates the federal grants and the CIP projects. On the right side under status, you can see that what we spent it on was the our first ever case management system for DYA, and that's to track data. And
Yeah.
it's hopefully we can better leverage federal funding by providing the much needed data that they request. It's also for the virtual learning centers. Not only did they use it for training and class during the pandemic, but we also used it to ensure that clients, even if they were sick, were able to visit with their families and also speak to their attorneys, and of course the Zoom hearings for the court. We also were able to provide, I believe, this also provided the resource centers with the same virtual learning centers in all 3 centers.
Okay, Mrs. Brennan, can you tell me of the $476,000 coming from ARC funding, is that on page number 8? Is there any, can you show me where it's at here?
Oh, so on the federal grants program and the capital improvement, it's the last, American Rescue Funds is the last grant or
Okay.
item on that.
And you have $2.7 million still pending in this one. It hasn't been spent.
It hasn't been spent, but the GG ones that I explained to you, and it will cover the shortfalls for FY23. Those are allowable expenses.
$2.7 million is anticipated to cover the shortfalls?
No. That's the total. So
Yeah.
we had to resubmit because of the 18%,
Right.
our budget narrative. But the budget plan really is, it's to provide, I believe, 2 resource center vans, which we need, and that will enable the youth at the centers to go on field trips for other activities, as well as to take the kids that are at the youth corrections facility to and from appointments, court hearings, therapy. In addition to that, it is for finite positions, such as a program coordinator and a social services supervisor 1 that can concentrate on focus on grant solicitations, which I personally don't have anyone that can do it right now, to go after grants like youth reentry and mentorship, credible messaging.
So my concern here is that, so this funding is going to cover somebody's paycheck.
It will
And
cover
then how
for
are
a
we
finite
going to,
time.
yeah, and then once the ARP funds are done, I mean, 2024, you have to utilize all this funding by 2024.
That's correct.
Are those individuals going to also lose their job because the funding runs out?
Well, hopefully the program coordinator that will be hired under this can leverage some federal funds and bring more federal dollars to the Department of Youth Affairs and keep them. But yes, it is, we did need it. We recognize that some of our social workers that normally work in the youth resource centers are currently at Child Protective Services. So as we transition back and to be able to stand up a 4th community resource center in Toto Gardens, we would need people on the ground to do that. And so there would be that transition. So we would bring our personnel back from Child Protective Service, stand up the Toto Gardens project, another community resource center, and allow the newer personnel to be with and augment staff at our current resource centers. We operate summer camps, intercession camps, and latchkey programs for homework assistance and other opportunities for latchkey kids.
You have close to $50,000 in grant funding, and that is expiring in September of 2022. If you add up all those areas, right, it's close to $50,000, maybe a little bit more. Are you going to be able to spend this money before the obligation date is over?
We are trying our best. Procurement sometimes is a painfully slow process, but yes, we are trying to encumber every single federal dollar before we spend our local dollars, Senator.
Okay. Well, you know, like I said, and I've been reiterating this to many of the other agencies, that we live in an artificial economy right now, and all this money, federal funding, is going to dry up, and then what is left? Positions that people have been working on, and if we don't have the money to sustain it, it's going to be a sad day for them.
We hope to sustain some of the positions that we're getting through the hiring of a program coordinator that can work on grants that we have not been able to leverage because of staffing shortages.
Okay, the last thing I think I'll go on because I don't want to belabor too long on this, is your special funds that you receive. In 2022, it was 930,221. This year, it was requested at 1,034,028. And this, I believe, is coming from the Healthy Futures Fund?
That's correct.
Okay. We also know that in FY21, the Healthy Futures Fund tracked below the projected revenues, about $3 million, if I'm not mistaken. So what happens if we don't track that amount in this, fiscal year in 2022? Have you made plans for that? Because if we don't have the full amount to provide you the appropriations for this section. In 2022, that is. Because I was talking about 2021, but now you're in 2022. It's still not tracking what was anticipated. So what funds your agency with this Healthy Futures Fund?
So the Healthy Futures Funds actually it covers personnel. It covers personnel in the resource centers, community program aides. And so if there was an issue with that funding, we would have to rely on lapse funds, which we were able to use last year. And we hope that we are able to utilize.
What is your lapse funds, by the way, before I forget to ask?
For FY22, we're tracking at...
No, 21.
Gosh. I don't think I currently have that figure. Hold on one moment. I do know that we will have to rely on our reserve funds to, we hope to ask that it be released in July of this year if we're tracking, properly. Can you ask?
I'm not showing, okay, here we go. Here we go. Well, this is FY22 in reserve funds. Right now you have in reserve 776,291 in reserve funds for FY22. But I think it's important to find out how much money do you have in lapse funds from 2021 to cover any kind of shortfall you have in 2022. I mean, you're already showing that we're having a shortfall in 2023. So if we can get that, because right now it's showing the governor has reserved only 776,000.
Yes. I do believe, I can get that figure. I'm sorry, I don't have it with me right now, but I can get that figure.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'm sure our chairman would like to know that number too as well as we move forward on your budget.
Yeah, we're texting right now. Hopefully we can get it before the end of
this
hearing.
Before it ends. I appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Brown, do you have any questions for the panel?
Senator Tello certainly covered a lot of key points. But I wanted to ask you, because obviously you had the large number of cases to address this past year of children in our community, and getting that process and coming in and assisting public health with that whole thing. How is that moving forward now? Because I know you were kind of tasked to also assist, kind of add another hat to your list of duties to assist with that. And was it just you were able to assist through your personnel in DYA to help public health, or how did you help facilitate that and at least reduce the numbers to a more manageable number, and certainly ensure that these children that needed the attention, obviously, and the support were provided with that because of the tremendous backlog? So and the other question, are you still tasked with that, or have you been able to revert back full-time to doing DYA and public health? continue to take over their respective responsibilities.
So the Human Service Program Administrator, who had retired in February of last year, that vacant position was recruited, and she began in April. So at this point, I have returned Corinne Bendicio as a youth. She had actually was in that acting position. She's actually returned. We have a social services supervisor and many of our social workers still there carrying cases. We're slowly transitioning back so that we can open our resource centers. It has been difficult. These cases are complex, and I was asking, okay, how many cases did we actually vet with them as we became the force multiplier? And Corinne just gave me the total number of referrals, not inclusive of the 900 backlog referrals. Okay, so we helped address 2,888 new referrals since January of last year, in addition to the 900 unaddressed.
That's obviously quite a substantial number. Have things gotten to level off where, and I'm sure when public health comes in, we can ask them the specifics on their end, but for you, in terms of the assistance you provided, is it at a more manageable level for them now that you're able to return back to your regular duties at DYA?
So I think what was the most challenging was that the older referrals, many of the kids had been in such neglected situations for a prolonged period that really what ended up happening was there were numerous exertions. So what it did to the foster care system, its impact was really hard. It went from 260 some children under foster care in 2021 when we first started to what it is today at 564. I think I checked today's numbers, was 564. But what we're seeing now is when we address every new referral and treat it with the urgency it needs, or even if it does not meet the criteria of child abuse and neglect, and we refer it to services, we stand a better chance of prevention, and the prevention of kids not only entering the child welfare system, but entering the juvenile justice system. So even though this has been quite challenging for us as DYA workers, is we see it also, the challenge is also an opportunity to do better by prevention and intervention in the child welfare services. What I have seen is that all of our kids, all of our status offenders at the Department of Youth Affairs presently are dual status youth or crossover youth. So they're involved with both child welfare, juvenile justice, maybe has a probation officer, and child protective services. So it's not uncommon for these kids to have 4 or 5 social workers, and to me, that we should be able to solve problems that way. So this challenge has presented more collaboration amongst agencies, and so I am hopeful, and I feel that this ongoing collaboration will continue even if we're all back at the Department of Youth Affairs. This is the only way we can do it. And if you look at the census of our kids in youth corrections, you will also find a high number of them also involved in the child welfare system.
I know Senator Tello had asked, but with regards to the pay increase for law enforcement, within your agency, are you paying that out of any other source of funding, or is it coming out of your existing budget?
I'm sorry. So we started paying this year.
You mentioned since January, yes.
Since January.
Right.
And so it is coming out of our FY22 budget. And again, any shortfalls, which we anticipate if there are any shortfalls, that it will come out of our ARP funds for those particular impacts.
And I just want to relay and echo also, because while I think we all can look at, oh, we have all this additional money coming in, yay, but I think in the near future, and I don't buy all this projection that's being made that we can do all these raises at this time, and not that certainly your personnel or any of the personnel in the Gov Guam agency performing the kind of work you do, especially with the kind of work that you do, because you are taking care of children. To to argue that they don't deserve these pay raises, but the reality of how do we pay for it and can we sustain it? More importantly to me, it's not just looking at this here and now. I mean, we all recognize it's an election year. Every other year on Guam is an election year. But it's can we sustain it? And I don't see that picture in my mind yet, clearly. And that's what concerns me. And I hate to, you know, especially because we're not determining pay raises through the normal course of events. I mean, the governor's making these decisions arbitrarily unless she's got connections down here that don't include the rest of us. But that's the concern, is that these pay raises are being given and then somehow we're supposed to figure it out in the budgets and try and sustain it. And that's the concern, that, you know, also to plan and prepare in the event, what options are you going to reorganize your operations in the event next fiscal year, the year after, that the revenues are not going to be there to do that. Of course, I would look at key agencies like yours that actually do take care of tangible people to be prioritized more than other areas. But I think we're creating a very artificial, not just an artificial economy that we believe already exists, but an artificial reality to think that during this time of challenge with this pandemic and while our you know, on our own economically, we can't sustain ourselves. We couldn't sustain the existing government right now if we remove that federal money off the table. That to me was the windfall, unfortunately, of a very unfortunate circumstance with this pandemic. It's been a major financial windfall for this government. But if we can't sustain it, or we end up having to cut into agencies, and I've been here long enough to know what that feels like, and it's a very painful process. And I'm sure with your operations, it's going to be very hard because you're going to say, wait a minute, all my people are part of a support network that take care of these children and the issues that they're facing. And of course, also because you also house, feed, take care of, you know, these young people on a regular basis. That's always an existing reality. But I just want to put that word of caution because from my perspective and just historically, I mean, we don't see how this is going to continue. And if our economy doesn't get back on track in the next 2 years, even 1 year, I don't know how we're going to fund the rest of the government of Guam to these levels. Is that anything you guys are looking, especially if you are relying on ARP funding to, you know, pay any additional cost of these raises till the end of your current fiscal year?
So one of the things that I clearly see is that the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention has several solicitations, several opportunities for federal funding, but I don't have the staff to actively go after each solicitation. I'm hoping that this finite program coordinator who has, you know, who can stay until 2024 can help pick up some of the slack and provide more federal funding that we can actually pay percentages, such as the Correctional Differential Pay, the Child Welfare Pay, by which all of these policies have, that all of the staff are aware of, is that it's only dependent on funding. And so for as long as we can fund them, and because we have ARP, I want to fund them. We have been through so many challenges. The things that we have done and are seeing, I told you in our highlights, I don't know how we would have gotten through without these extra incentives. When we were at Child Protective Services, we were there, and as we were coming in, one after the other of Child Protective Services were leaving. They were getting federally funded jobs at GDOE, at GMH, which they thought, oh, okay, well, it's much easier work. And, you know, I applaud them and good luck to them, but meanwhile, someone had to stay and do it. And we have been doing it. We have been in the trenches. We do want to get out, and we do hope that some of the federal funds that public health has, they can utilize, at least in the interim, to replace us, because we know that when we leave, it's going to be hard for them. And so, is it sustainable? We hope to sustain it through some federal funding, by leveraging some of those federal funding that are out of my grasp right now.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you're looking at other options, and certainly, I mean, if there's other federal programs and grants that are available out there that can be used to assist, by all means, I'm happy to hear that you're taking the initiative to do that in spite of where we're at this point. I did want to ask, with regards to this past fiscal year, how much was transferred? Was any funds transferred out of DYA by the administration? And if so, how much?
Okay, I'm going to have to get back to you on that, but I do have an update on Senator Tello's request. The short one. Sorry. So the carryover for 2021 amounted to $330,345. That's largely due to the fact that our summer youth employment program was covered by federal funds.
Okay, that was 300, say again? 300 and...
Carryover, $330,345.
Okay, so that's what your lapse is for 2021.
I also know that some funding was transferred. I'm trying to get that amount too. I apologize, my administrative services officer is currently off island.
Senator Brown, you have any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to look
let's
for
finish up the
a second,
senators first.
Mr. Chair, at the amount. Just hold on. Okay, let me have this. Well, this letter that came out here from the governor to the speaker back in April indicates with these figures here about a total of, one was about for 18,709, one was for 30,000, another one was for 40,000, so it comes out to about $88,700 plus taken out of DYA. Do we know why? I mean, is it you didn't need these funds, and then at the other end we're relying on ARP funding to implement any additional costs for the raises?
So we're communicating with our ASO to find out exactly what that number, I know that it was, there was a figure, but I wasn't quite sure what it was.
Were you notified at the time or asked if you needed the funds before
We
they
were
taken out?
notified, I believe in a cabinet meeting, that there would be some transfers prior to, but we didn't have an amount.
But not your specific, you weren't told specifically for DYA, we're going to transfer X amount of dollars out of your agency?
We were informed, I think in a cabinet meeting, that there would be some transfers occurring, so we were all to expect it.
Well, I think it's just all-
$89,542 to be exact. $89,542.
It's about 88,700, whichever, give or take a few dollars. I just want to, at least be aware of that and publicly, just so that we kind of understand. I mean, you're having your critical operation, and certainly, as you mentioned, if you are needing to take funds from ARP to cover the cost, again, of these pay raises that we did not put in place. That's normal budgeting process. You would think the legislature would authorize the appropriation, but right now we have a very unique circumstance where the governor in and of herself is creating pay raises and putting them in place and adding these additional costs on the overall operations of the government without certainly our awareness as legislators. I can only speak for myself and maybe a few others here of how and where that funding source is going to come from. And again, I think we need to be fiscally responsible always. I mean, great that there's a little extra money on the table these days, but we know it's not going to sustain itself. And how do we put all the things in place and grant this? And then it's very hard to take things back when you give them. Especially, and there's no argument, and I appreciate you certainly standing up for your personnel and defending the type of work and the difficult work that they do, and certainly who can argue against that? But, the bottom line comes to how do we address funding it? How do we sustain it? And it's irresponsible for us to just look at the short term and not look at what the long-term implications are. Because the bottom line is, can the people of Guam afford it? Can the people of Guam afford the amount of government, obviously, that we want to give them? But yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, I would be concerned about any dollars being taken out of your agency just because of the type of work that you do and obviously the need for the finances that are there. So I just wanted to note that for the record, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you for commenting and responding to my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Brennan, before I ask the Oversight Chair if they have any questions, before you ask, let's go back a little bit to when we're talking about the special funds. The system is tracking that's $1.2 million shortfall, but you're not the only agency that gets HFF, okay? I want to make sure we have that clear to the people of Guam. You're not the only one. So that 1.2 is spread across Guam Behavioral, DISIT, GMH, GDOE, and you. And you're probably getting the smallest amount. So at the end of the day, I honestly believe the administration is going to take a look at you folks and say, if you only need $100,000 to keep someone employed, I think they're going to probably say, done. They'll tell the other folks, look at your grants, figure it out. Now, when they talked about the ARP, you identified a shortfall. When did you get that ARP money? Was that just this year?
That's correct. We got it.
Okay. So it's not an issue of, and do you have a copy of exactly what we're all looking at? And if we look at it, and we look at it across the board, from 21, 22, and 23, the impact is the 18%. And I'm happy you got it for your folks. So with that, I think we'll just move along, all right? Senator Manders.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions, ma'am?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions for you. It was a very thorough presentation, and we covered a lot in the previous questions, and we communicate regularly, so I am comfortable with the budget that you presented today. I want to thank you for your time, for everyone's hard work that they put into this, and especially your hard work over the course of these last couple of very difficult years. I'm very proud of the work that the Department of Youth Affairs does, and I've seen you day in and day out what you do for our young people on Guam, not just those in our correctional facility, but those in our community who we are trying to keep out of the correctional facility, those who we are trying to bring services and opportunities to. I know that all of you have really given your life's work to that, and I'm very grateful. I also want to welcome Mr. Weekly to the team. I know you have a lot to take on, but I'm confident that you're going to do a great job. You're going to be a great addition to this team. I'm also very hopeful, Director Brennan, what you said, hopeful for the future of DYA, seeing the RFK Alliance come in to do this full assessment to help us really understand what the best move forward is for the department and for the future of our youth on Guam. And so I look forward to continue working with you to supporting this budget for you, and especially for our law enforcement officers in the department who we know are very deserving of this pay raise and doing what we can to support that. We know it's a difficult time for everyone, but you're right, everything that you've gone through, the difficult situation, putting yourselves in harm's way, we've seen it, and how the facilities are also a difficult place to work and to be, and all of the stress that you deal with and you undertake every day. And so I know we are grateful here on our end, and we look forward to supporting you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The committee will conclude the budget hearing. The committee will continue to receive testimony. Ms. Brennan, questions that were asked of your staff. If you didn't complete the answer and you're still looking at it, please provide it in writing so we will be able to provide everyone in the committee with those responses. And please address your testimony to the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. Augustin at gmail.com or to my office located at Rand Care Building, second floor, Suite 3, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Sizuz Masi for your attendance and participation in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. This budget hearing on Bill 276-36 COR, relative to the Department of Youth Affairs, is duly heard and is now adjourned. The time now is 4:32. Please be safe and enjoy your weekend. Take care.